Hello and welcome. This is the first course in a 4-course specialization on business statistics and analysis, and I'm your instructor Sharad Borle. This first course will equip you with all the Excel spreadsheet tools necessary for analyzing data. This is the foundational course on use of Excel for purposes of business statistics and analysis. You'll be introduced to Excel spreadsheets. You will learn to read data in various formats into the Excel software, manipulate the data, and organize it using basic spreadsheet operations. The course then moves to more advanced Excel functionality, such as the use of various if commands, the various count commands, the sum commands, and so on. You will also learn very useful functions in Excel, such as the various lookup functions and the so powerful and useful pivot table feature of Excel, which allows you to produce data dashboards and data summaries in a variety of ways. The course culminates with understanding and getting to use various data graphing and charting techniques. You'll be able to create your own data visualizations using a variety of graphing tools available in Excel. I welcome you to the course, and I'm very excited to be a part of it. In this lesson, we'll be seeing some of the common methods of reading data into Excel, namely when the data is presented as a regular Excel file or it is presented as a text file where the text is delimited either by a comma, a tab, or a space. Before we can manipulate data, we need to read the data into Excel. We'll look at two broad formats of reading data into Excel. One is the regular Excel format, where the data file ends with a .xlsx extension or a .xls extension. And the other is a text format, where the data file ends with a .txt extension. Within the text format, we'll consider three different text formats. Number one, when the data is presented as a comma-separated text file, when it is presented as a tab delimited text file, and finally, when it is presented as a fixed width text file. The data comes from a store in Canada selling office supplies online, and it is contained in the file store sales. Let us begin by reading the data into an Excel format. So we open our Excel spreadsheet. We open the file store sales. And notice Excel reads in all the data into columns. These various columns have the headings. The very first column is the order ID, which is an internal identification mark given to an order. The order date, the date of placement of the order. The date format is month, day, and year. The priority attached to the order. The quantity of order. The dollar sales of the order. The shipment mode of the order. So the company ships its products using either regular air, express air, or a delivery truck. The shipping cost in dollars incurred by the company. The province in Canada where the order is shipped to. The company segments its customers into various segments. So the customer segment to which the order is going to. The product category, again, the company has three broad categories of products. So which product category it belongs to. The product subcategory. The container in which the order is shipped, a small box, medium box, wrap bag, jumbo drum, and finally the shipment date. Next, we'll read the same data when it is presented to us in a text format. We'll begin with a comma-separated text format. When the data is presented in a comma-separated format, this is how the file looks like. So you have data organized in rows where the topmost row is the header row and subsequent rows are the data points. And every data point is separated by a comma. So to read this data into Excel, once again, we open an Excel spreadsheet and read this data. Reopen the file store sales, comma delimited. you would notice a text wizard opens up and it'll ask you choose the file type that best describes your data. This is a delimited file. I choose the delimited option, do a next, and this data is comma delimited. So amongst the delimiters, I select the comma because it's comma delimited, do a next, and then finish. And you would notice Excel reads in the data. You would also see that some of the columns the width is reduced, and hence you cannot see those data points clearly. It's very easy to fix it. You select all your columns, take your cursor to the top till you see a plus sign and do a double click. And Excel properly reformats the column widths. Next, let us read data when it is presented in a text format, which is tab delimited. When the text data file is tab delimited, this is how the data file looks like. And once again, to read it into Excel, we open a spreadsheet, go to File, and then open the file, Store Sales tab delimited. Store Sales tab delimited text. Once again, the wizard opens up. You click, you check the delimited option, do a next. But now your delimiter is a tab. Hence, you select the delimiter as tab, do a next, and do a finish. Once again, the data is read in. You can again change the column widths. And the data is all properly read into Excel. Next, let us see how to read in data when it is presented as a fixed width format. When the data is presented in a fixed width format, this is how the data looks like. And once again, to read it into Excel, all we do is we open an Excel spreadsheet, go to File, and then open the file Store Sales Fixed Width. Again, a text import wizard opens up. And now your data is not delimited, rather it is fixed width. So you need to select the fixed width option, do a next, and you would notice that Excel puts in these vertical lines or column delimiters. So let's glance from left to right to see whether these column separators have been properly put in. So you would notice in shipment mode, we do not need this column separator. So we can remove this by double clicking on it. Again, as we move from left to right, making sure that the column separators have been put in properly. Once again, the column separator for product container and additional column separator has been put in. We can remove it. And then we do a next and then finish. Once again, the data is read in and we can change the column widths. This lesson deals with some basic data manipulation in Excel. We will see how to move across cells in a spreadsheet. For example, how to move from the top of a column to the bottom of that column, how to format cells, how to sort various columns in a spreadsheet, how to add levels to the sorting, how to hide some columns so that they are not visible, how to unhide them. Continuing with our basic data manipulation in Excel, let us open the Excel file Store Sales. We go to File and we click on the file Store Sales. So the file gets opened up. Now a question could be asked, how many orders are there in this data file? Or in other words, how many rows are there in this data file? So we need to count the number of rows. One easy way to do that is take your cursor, place it in the very first cell, cell A1, and then do a control down arrow. So it will take you to the last row of the data. So you would see that there are 8,399 rows. Remember, the very first row is a header row. Hence, the row number 8,400 corresponds to the data row 8,399. To go back to the very first cell, again, simply you do a control and up arrow. So it will take you to the very first cell again. Next, you would see that the sales column, certain sales volume in dollars is given with 4 decimal places. So you may not want 4 decimal places. You may want to see them as only 2 decimal places. So how do I change that? I select my entire column, do a right click, go to Format Cells, and then click on Number. And here I can choose how many decimal places I need to see. So if I choose 2 and then do an OK, so now all these numbers, the dollar sales numbers, are displayed in 2 decimal places. You would also notice that this file is not organized in any particular order. In other words, there is no specific sorting order to this file. So let's say if we wish to sort this entire data in an increasing order of date, and within a particular date, I want the data to be sorted in a decreasing order of dollar sales volume. So how do I do that? First, I select my entire data. To do that, I put my cursor in the very first cell, do a Shift Control right arrow. It selects that entire first row. Next, I do a Shift Control down arrow. So now it will go down and the entire set of data is selected. Next, I go to Data. So remember, I need to sort the data. I go to Data, select the Sort function, Sort. I need to make sure that my data has headers. This box is checked because this tells Excel that the very first row is a header row. So I make sure this is checked. Next, I need to indicate by which particular column or which particular header I need to sort the data. So I'll sort it by order date. I select order date. I want it from the oldest to the newest. Then within an order date, the next level of sorting, I need to use this dollar sales volume. So I'll add a level. I'll click on add level and select sales. And sales, I wish to order from the largest sales to smallest sale. So I click this down arrow there and select largest to smallest and do an OK. So you would notice that the data has been sorted in an increasing order of date, and within a particular date, you would see within a particular date, the data has been organized or sorted in a decreasing order of sales. Next, what if I'm presenting this data to an audience and I do not wish to present all the columns contained in this data? Or in other words, I wish to hide a few columns. For example, I may want to hide the column province and also the columns product category and product subcategory. So how do I hide these columns? So first I need to select these 3 columns. So how do I select them? I do a mouse click on column H, which is the province. And then because the next column I need to select is not an adjacent column, I go to column J, which is the product category, do a control mouse click. So column J gets selected. Do the same thing for column K, control mouse click, and the column product subcategory gets selected. Now I do a right click and go to hide. And you would see that these columns now are hidden. For example, I have column E, F, G, and then H is hidden. Then I have column I, and then J and K columns are hidden. They're not deleted, they're just hidden. The column is still there, it's just hidden from the view. What if I want to unhide these columns? So I select a number of columns, making sure that the extreme adjacent columns from all the hidden columns are selected. In this case, I'm making sure that column G as well as column L is selected. Do a right click and click on unhide. So I get back my original view. We will now see how to perform arithmetic manipulation in Excel. We will see how to enter a formula in a spreadsheet, to add columns, subtract them, divide and multiply them, how we can then copy and paste these formulas across the spreadsheet. Some arithmetic manipulation in Excel. Let's say in this data, the store sales data, we wish to calculate the unit price of an order. The unit price of an order is simply the dollar sales divided by the order quantity. So for this, we insert a column next to the sales column by doing a right click, insert, and let's call this column as unit price. So how do I calculate unit price? It is sales divided by order quantity. So I do a is equal to, I select cell E2, which is the sales. I can also type in E2 instead of selecting it, divide by the cell D2, which is the order quantity, and then do a enter. So the unit price gets calculated, and now I can copy and paste this formula all the way down. How do I do that? I select this formula, the cell, take my cursor to the bottom right hand corner of the cell till I see a thin plus sign. Now when I see a thin plus sign, I do a double click. So the entire column gets populated and we have the column of unit prices. Next, let us calculate the total cost to the consumer. The total cost to the consumer is the sales cost plus the shipping cost. So let's calculate the total cost to the consumer. So for this, we insert a column next to the shipping cost. Right click, insert, and let's call it total cost. And this total cost is calculated as, I put a is equal to, it is my whatever number is in the sales column, the dollar sales, plus whatever number is in the shipping column, shipping cost. So cell E2 plus H2. I do an enter. And similarly, I can copy and paste this formula all the way down. I go to the bottom right till I see a thin plus sign and then do a double click. So the entire column gets populated. Next, let us insert a running serial number in this data file. Since the column order ID is not organized in any particular order, so I'll insert a column to the left of it, right click, insert, and call this column as serial number. So for the very first order, I put in a number 1. For the next order, I increment this number by 1. So I do a is equal to, I select the earlier cell, cell A2, plus 1. Enter. So it becomes 2. I can now copy and paste it all the way down. And then do a control down arrow to go to the last row. And notice it has put in serial numbers 1 through 8,399. If I again copy this number and paste it again, it will further increment it by 1, giving me 8,400. What if when I copy and paste, I do not want to increment it? So I do a copy, right click, copy. But now in the next cell, when I want to paste it, I do not want it to increment it by 1. So I do a paste special values. So I do a right click, paste. Amongst the paste options, I choose the second option, which is values. And now you would notice it has not incremented by 1. It has copied the number 8,400. Though it has become left aligned, but I can always change that. I select that cell, go to home, and click on this right align button. So it has become right aligned. In this lesson, we will study how to format the headers or the column titles in Excel by freezing the very first row. We'll also see use of the sum function to sum across data range and the SUMIF function to selectively sum across a data range. We have the store sales Excel data file. This data file contains data from an online store in Canada selling office supplies. So let us begin by first increasing the zoom level of this file. So we go to the bottom right hand corner and increase the zoom level to 150%. Next, what we'll do is we'll freeze the very top row of this file so that when we scroll down the file, we are still able to see the column headers. So freezing the very top row freezes the column headers, and we can view the column headers when we scroll down the file. So we select the very first row, go to View, Freeze Panes, and freeze the top row. So now what happens, the very top row has been frozen. So when I scroll down, you would see that the top row still remains there. So I know which column is what particular variable. Next, what we'll do is we'll calculate the grand total sales. That is, we'll sum up the entire column E. The grand total sales that this store made across the period of the data. So what we do is we go down to the very last row of the file by doing a control down arrow. So we are at the bottommost row. Next what we do is to calculate the grand total sales, let's put down grand total sales. So we do a is equal to sum, open parenthesis, and we'll put in the entire column E within parentheses. So one easy way to do that is I select the very last cell and do a shift control up arrow. So you would see that it selects the entire column E, but I really do not want the summing to start from E1 because E1 is the column header. So I'll change it to E2. And I'll close parenthesis. And I get the grand total sales. Next, what we'll do is we'll calculate the total sales as per customer segments. So this store has 4 customer segments: home office, corporate, small business, and consumer. So we'll sum up the sales across each of these 4 customer segments. So total sales, home office, total sales, corporate, total sales, small business, total sales, consumer. So we'll sum up the sales in each of these customer segments. So for this, we'll execute a SUMIF command. So we do a is equal to SUMIF, open parenthesis, and you would notice now Excel prompts you that this needs 3 inputs. The first is the range where the criteria exists. That is really my column I. The second is what criteria, that is what particular customer segment I need to sum across. And the third input is the sum range, which would be my column E where the sales are. So let's put in the very first input there, the range where my criteria exists. So I put my cursor there at the very bottom, do a shift control up arrow. Once again, I really don't need it to start from I1. I'll change it to I2. Put a comma there. The next input is the criteria. So here, because first I'm summing up for home office, Within quotations, I'll put home office, close quotations, another comma, and then the last input is the sum range, which is my column E, where my sales are. So put my cursor at the very bottom, do a shift control up arrow, change E1 to E2, close parenthesis, and I get my total sales for home office. I can also change the formatting of these numbers by selecting these numbers, do a right click, format cells. I'll put a currency formatting because these are dollar sales, and choose an appropriate format for the currency depending on where I want the comma marks to be put in, and do an OK. And I can also increase the column width there. So now I have these numbers properly formatted as per the dollar format. So similarly, I can also calculate the total sales for the corporate segment, the total sales for the small business segment, the total sales for the consumer segment. Once you have calculated the remaining three segments too, you can confirm for yourself that indeed the sum of sales across the four segments is equal to the grand total sales that we had calculated earlier. In the following lesson, we will introduce how to enter formulas in Excel using absolute reference to a particular cell and also using relative reference to the cell. We'll also introduce functions of formulas to calculate the maximum of a data range, the minimum of the range, to count the number of data elements in a particular range, to selectively count the number of data elements, and to use the power function in Excel, which is raising a number to a particular power. In an earlier lesson, we had calculated the grand total sales in this Excel data file, store sales, and then we had also calculated the sales across each of the four customer segments. Next, what we'll do is we'll calculate the contribution of these four customer segments, these individual four customer segments, towards the grand total sales. So for better viewing clarity, let us insert an empty row above grand total sales. So I select grand total sales, right click, insert. So an empty cell is inserted there. Next, we'll calculate the percentage share of these customer segments towards the grand total sales. So for example, for the total sales home office, what percentage is it of the total grand sales? So I do a is equal to, I select that number, cell E8408, divided by the grand total sales. So this gives me a number 0.23899. I can also format it so that it is viewed as a percentage. So I select these cells, do a right click, format cells, format it as a percentage, and do an OK. So now I see the numbers in terms of percentages. Next, I'll do the same thing for total sales corporate. So for that, instead of retyping the formula, I can copy the formula. So I do a right click, copy, and then I paste the formula. However, you'll notice when I paste the formula, there's an error there. Why is that error? Let's examine the formula. So when I paste the formula, the numerator appropriately is cell 8405, which is the total sales of the corporate customer segment. But you would see that the denominator now has incremented beyond cell E8409. I want it to be cell E8409. So for that purpose, what I need to do is I need to fix the row 8409 so that when I copy and paste the formula always refers to the row 8409. So how do I fix that? I go back, I delete that. Before copying and pasting the formula, what I do is to fix the specific row, I put a $sign in front of that row. So I put a $sign in front of 8409. So now when I'll copy and paste this formula, the denominator would always refer to row 8409. So let's do that now. So I copy and paste the formula. And if you view the formula, you would see that now appropriately the numerator has been incremented so that it refers to the total sales corporate, but the denominator again appropriately refers to the grand total sales. And I can copy and paste it for the remaining two customer segments also. So these are the total contributions of these 4 consumer segments. Next, we will introduce a few more commands helpful in the study of business statistics. In particular, the max command to calculate the maximum of a data range, the min command to calculate the minimum of a data range, the count command to count the number of elements in a data range, the COUNTIF command to count the number of elements in a data range based on certain condition, power command to calculate a number raised to the power of some other number. So the max command is simply is equal to max open parenthesis and the data range. Let's say we wish to calculate the maximum sales out of the 4 customer segments. So we select these 4 numbers, close parenthesis. The maximum of these 4 numbers is shown there. Similarly, the minimum of these 4 numbers, I do a min, select these 4 numbers. The minimum shows up. Count, again I do a count. I wish to count the number of elements across these rows. So count, open parenthesis. I select this entire range, close parenthesis. It gives me the count, 4 elements in the data range. COUNTIF, now let's say if I wish to count the number of elements in this data range, which is in excess of $3 million. So I do a is equal to COUNTIF, open parenthesis. Now there are 2 inputs there. Excel is prompting me. The first input is the range, and the second input that I need to put in is the criteria. So the range remains the same. Then I do a comma, and now I need to put in the criteria. My criteria is that I wish to count if the number is in excess of $3 million. So I put a quotation mark, greater than 3 million. And close quotation mark, close parenthesis. So now it will count the number of elements in the data range which are in excess of $3 million. So it gives me the number 3. Finally, the power command. Let's say if I wish to calculate 3 raised to the power 9. So I do a power, open parenthesis, 3 raised to the power 9. Excel is also prompting me there, 3 comma raised to the power 9. 19683. I could have also calculated it by putting in a 3 and then this special hat character and then 9. It would have given me the same number. In the lesson that follows, we will revisit the functions in Excel and specifically see the copying and pasting of functions or formulas using relative and fixed referencing. We have been talking about functions in this course, and we have also used them in some lessons. Functions make Excel a very powerful software. So let us visit them again to emphasize their importance. The general format of entering a function in Excel is to put in a is equal to, then the function name, and then within parentheses, the arguments that the function takes. For example, if I wish to sum up the numbers in cells A1 through A20, what I would do is I would put an equal to, then sum, then within parentheses, I'll put in the arguments A1 through A20. And when I press enter or a return, I'll get my answer 1576. Let us look at another example by going to the file survey results. This file contains data from a survey carried out on a college campus where they interviewed a representative set of students across the 4 years of the college about their opinions on a new dining facility on campus. Specifically, they were asked whether they approve of the dining facility, disapprove, or had no opinion. You will note that this file is incomplete in the sense that though we know a total of 200 students interviewed approved of the dining facility, 300 disapproved, 100 had no opinion, but we do not know how these students are distributed across the 4 years of college. For example, out of the 100 students who had no opinion, we do not know how many belong to year 1, how many to year 2, how many to year 3, and how many to year 4, and so on. So our job here is to complete this table under the assumption that the opinion of a student about the dining facility is independent of his or hers year within that college. So let's begin by first summing up the total number of students. We could either do that by summing across rows or summing across columns. So we put our cursor in cell G8, do a is equal to sum. Let us sum across columns C8 through F8 close parenthesis. I get a total of 600 students. I would have gotten the same number if I had also summed across the rows. Now notice that 200 is a third of 600, or in other words, 1/3 of all the students surveyed approved of the dining facility. So we would expect the same proportion to also apply across years. In other words, the number that will go in the top left-hand corner cell would be 1/3 of 120, or in other words, 40. We would expect 40 students in that cell. We also have a formula for that. We could also have entered a formula for that. And what is the formula? Row total multiplied by column total divided by grand total. So let's use that formula. I do a is equal to row total cell G5 multiplied by column total cell C8 divided by grand total cell G8. I press an enter and I get the number 40. I can now copy and paste this formula across the table to populate the entire table. However, before I do that, I need to make some modifications in the formula. For example, if I go to the formula, when I copy and paste this formula down, the denominator, which is the grand total, cell G8, I always want all the formulas, when I copy and paste it down, I want all the cells to always refer to cell G8. I do not want any relative referencing when I copy and paste this formula. How can I ensure that? By putting a dollar sign in front of the numeral, which is 8, which fixes the row. That is, when I copy and paste, it will always refer to row 8. And also putting a dollar sign in front of the alphabet G. So that means when I copy and paste it, it will always refer to column G. So putting $2 signs, that means I fixed the reference to cell G8. Now when I copy and paste the formula, it will always refer to the cell G8. Coming to the numerator, the first entry, which is my row total, cell G5. Now when I copy and paste this formula across this table, I want the formula to always access the column G. But in terms of rows, I want the row to increment to row 6, row 7, depending on which row I'm copying and pasting this formula to. So I can do that by putting a dollar sign in front of the letter G, which fixes the column, but I'll not put a dollar sign in front of the number 5 because I want the row to increment when I copy and paste it. But the same logic, cell C8 which is my column total, when I copy and paste this formula, I want the formula to always refer to row 8, but I want the columns to change depending on where I'm copying and pasting it. So I'll put a $sign in front of the number, but not the alphabet. That completes my modification in the formula. And now I press an enter, and now I can copy this formula and paste it across the table. And I populate the table. I could have also done that by simply selecting that cell, taking my cursor to the bottom right-hand corner till I see a thin plus sign, and then dragging it across the table. That fills up the first row, and then doing the same thing with the entire row selected. When I see a thin plus sign, dragging it down so that it fills up the entire table.
Thank you for watching our video. We hope you found it helpful. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button below and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. If you know someone who could benefit from this information, please share it with them. We would love to hear your thoughts on this learning course, so please leave a comment below. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.